The early morning sun had barely touched the edges of the city when Maria wiped her tired hands on her apron and looked down at her little puppy, Max, who wagged his tail with innocent excitement. For Maria, the small joys in life came in brief, fleeting moments, and Max was her brightest one. She had worked tirelessly for years as a maid for a wealthy family in the heart of the city, always keeping her head down, her voice quiet, and her dreams locked away, hidden beneath the burden of endless chores. The family she served, Mr. and Mrs. Thornton, had everything money could buy: luxury cars, high-rise apartments, designer clothing, and a reputation for sophistication. Yet behind the polished exterior, there was cruelty, sharp words, and impatience that often spilled over into her life. This particular morning, Maria had been asked to clean the sunroom, a space filled with antique furniture and delicate glass ornaments that seemed to mock her with their fragility. Max followed her closely, his little paws pattering softly against the marble floor. She chuckled softly as he chased a stray sunbeam across the room, his innocence a stark contrast to the tension that always lingered when the Thorntons were near. She had learned, over countless months, to tread carefully, to anticipate their moods, and to avoid any missteps that might draw their anger. But nothing could prepare her for what came next. Mrs. Thornton entered the sunroom with her usual haughty stride, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Her eyes, cold and calculating, immediately fell on Max. "What is that mutt doing here?" she snapped, her voice slicing through the quiet. Maria froze, her heart thudding in her chest. He's just playing," she stammered. But before she could take another step, Mrs. Thornton kicked out at Max with a sharp motion. The tiny puppy yelped and scrambled away, his body trembling, eyes wide with fear. Maria's stomach sank, and tears sprang to her eyes. She rushed to Max, scooping him up into her arms, her voice breaking as she whispered apologies he didn't need. "Why do you even keep that thing? It's pathetic," Mrs. Thornton barked, turning away with a disgusted huff. Maria's hands shook, but she held Max close, feeling the warmth of his tiny body against her chest. The world seemed to close in on her, the walls of the sunroom suddenly suffocating. Every insult, every harsh word, every small act of cruelty she had endured over the years seemed to crash down on her in that moment. She wanted to run, to escape this house, to disappear from a life that had made her feel so invisible. Yet she stayed, because she had no one else. Outside the house, a man watched from a distance, his presence unnoticed. Ethan Cole was a Navy SEAL, recently retired, who had settled into the neighborhood to recover from years of deployments and combat missions. He was a quiet man, observant, and deeply attuned to the suffering of others, a trait honed not only by his military training but by the empathy he had cultivated after witnessing countless human tragedies. That morning, as he jogged past the Thorntons' estate, he saw Maria holding Max, her body tense and her eyes glistening with tears. He noticed Mrs. Thornton's aggressive gestures and the way the puppy whimpered, and something inside him tightened with protective instinct. Ethan didn't hesitate. In a few swift steps, he approached the front gate, the sound of his running shoes muffled by the grass. He didn't know the details of what had happened yet, but the scene he had witnessed was enough to trigger his action. Just as he reached the edge of the driveway, he caught Mrs. Thornton's sharp glare and her condescending voice lashing out at Maria again. Without a word, he called out, his tone calm but commanding. "Hey, that's enough." Mrs. Thornton froze, her face twisted in surprise. No one had ever spoken to her like that, certainly not a stranger, and certainly not someone who carried the aura of authority and strength that Ethan exuded. Maria looked up, her breath catching in disbelief. The fear in her chest began to give way to a fragile hope. Ethan strode forward, his presence steady and unyielding. "Step away from her," he said, his voice carrying a quiet intensity. Mrs. Thornton's lips pressed into a thin line. "And who are you?" she demanded, but her voice wavered slightly, as if sensing that her power here was no longer absolute. "I'm someone who doesn't tolerate cruelty," Ethan replied simply, his eyes locked on hers. Then, without waiting for further argument, he turned to Maria. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. Maria nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks, and Max whimpered in recognition, nuzzling closer to her. Ethan crouched down slightly, letting Max sniff his hand, earning the puppy's cautious trust. In that small gesture, Maria felt a flicker of relief she hadn't known in years. Someone had seen her. Someone had truly seen her pain. Mrs. Thornton, realizing she had lost control of the situation, retreated into the background, her anger simmering but impotent. Mr. Thornton appeared from a side door, his expression a mixture of confusion and indignation. "What's going on here?" he demanded. Ethan didn't flinch. "This woman deserves respect. That puppy deserves safety. If you can't provide that, then stay out of their way." The words were simple, but the weight behind them carried an unspoken warning. Maria felt a warmth spread through her chest, a sense of validation she had never experienced before. In the face of injustice, someone had stood up, not for fame, not for recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. Ethan's presence was not just protection, it was affirmation of her humanity. Max, sensing the shift in energy, wagged his tail tentatively, letting out a small bark as if agreeing with the man who had come to their rescue. Over the next few days, Ethan checked on Maria, offering guidance and support as she navigated the aftermath of the incident. He helped her understand that kindness was not weakness, and that courage often came in the form of standing up for oneself, even in the smallest ways. Maria began to see herself differently. She realized that her life did not have to be defined by the cruelty of others, and that she had the power to create moments of happiness, however fleeting, in the presence of those who truly cared. Word of the incident spread through the neighborhood, and people began to see the Thorntons in a new light. Some confronted them, others distanced themselves, but Maria no longer felt trapped in the shadows of their wealth and arrogance. She had a protector, yes, but more importantly, she had found her own voice. She started small, walking Max in the park, greeting neighbors, and even advocating for other workers who had endured similar mistreatment. The fear that had once held her captive began to dissolve, replaced by a quiet confidence that grew with each passing day. Ethan watched her transformation with a sense of pride that went beyond any military achievement. He had spent years defending strangers on distant battlefields, yet he realized that true heroism could also exist in everyday life, standing up for the vulnerable, speaking out against injustice, and inspiring others to do the same. Maria's journey became a living testament to this truth, and he found solace in knowing that his intervention, however small, had sparked a ripple effect of change. Months later, Maria looked down at Max, who now frolicked freely in the sunlit living room of her modest apartment. She smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and reflected on how much had changed in such a short time. The fear and humiliation she had endured seemed like distant shadows, replaced by gratitude and hope. She knew that life would still have its challenges, but for the first time, she felt equipped to face them. She was no longer invisible, and she no longer allowed the cruelty of others to define her existence. Ethan remained a steadfast friend, often checking in and offering quiet encouragement. Their bond was one built on mutual respect, trust, and the shared understanding that kindness could transform lives in ways that money never could. Maria learned that courage wasn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it was the quiet decision to protect the vulnerable, to speak out, and to refuse to be intimidated by those who sought to wield power unjustly. The story of Maria and Max became a beacon for others in the community, a reminder that compassion could overcome cruelty and that even the smallest act of courage could ignite profound change. People began to recognize the value of empathy, the strength found in protecting those who cannot defend themselves, and the importance of standing up for what is right, no matter the cost. Maria's journey was proof that one moment, one act of bravery, could alter the course of a life forever. And so, as the sun set each evening, casting golden light over her small apartment, Maria held Max close, feeling the warmth of his soft fur and the quiet joy that had once seemed impossible. She knew that the world could be harsh, that cruelty still existed, but she also knew that love, courage, and the kindness of strangers had the power to heal wounds, uplift spirits, and inspire hope. In the heart of a city defined by wealth and status, Maria had discovered a truth more valuable than any material possession, that compassion, when acted upon, could change everything. As Max barked happily at a passing butterfly, Maria laughed, a sound filled with relief and newfound strength. She no longer felt alone, no longer felt powerless. The Navy SEAL who had intervened that fateful morning had not only saved a puppy and his owner but had sparked a journey of transformation, self-discovery, and resilience. And in that moment, Maria understood something she had never realized before, that life's true riches are found not in money or possessions, but in courage, compassion, and the unwavering belief that every person deserves dignity, love, and a chance to thrive.